Hi, this is Nikki. I just thought I'd quickly show you this little recipe book I've made for a lady. She wasn't really bothered what style or anything, and I've got a few sheets of the Domestic Goddess paper from Graphic 45, which I've hoarded and hoarded. So I've decided to use it on her recipe book. I've covered two book covers with paper. This was paper pad I got at Michael's when I was on holiday last year, and I've used this one with the doilies along the bottom, and then I cut this image from the Graphic 45 paper because I thought it was lovely. Behind here I've got a real doily, a square one, which I thought sort of just highlighted this as well, went together. And this is a Tilda image from, I can't remember what range it was. If you want to know, I can let you know, but you've seen me use them before. I've used some of my vintage letters from the game I bought, which I really like. They give it a nice feel. And for a change, I didn't have a coil that was quite small enough, and I put a big one on and it looked silly, it didn't work right. So I used this. Somebody gave me an old belt, one of those with like round shell pieces and beads and things on. It was broken and they said, would I want it for the beads and things. And so this was the cord that was on keeping everything together. And what I've done is, I've just noticed that one's coming undone actually, now I've said that. I've tied them all up and then put a spot of glossy accent when I tied them to secure them together. But this one, it looks like it might have missed the glossy accent and it's come undone. So I will have to sort that. Because I don't want that to come undone, obviously, or the pages will fall out. It's quite a nice way of securing it, and it's made it much more easy to make it lie flat. You know, if you were writing something, which obviously you're going to be writing recipes, aren't you? So I made a little pocket here with a vintage advert for Worcestershire sauce. And then just put the index card on the back so you could write on it. This was from the same paper pad that I've put on the inside. And here I've used a game card. This is Miss Bunderbaker's daughter. And behind her I've tucked just a note card, which I've backed with some paper that's got baking things on. This page here was from the Graphic 45, and it was the one with where you could do the calendar, so it got all the months in. But I'd only got one page. I got July, which had got cherries on it, I think it was. This was from a cooking journal, and I've just stuck a vintage advert for some jam on it. And then on the back here I've got a recipe card, and I've got one or two of them throughout the book. Just a piece of lined paper here with a vintage advert for Coleman's mustard on it. And then on the back here, this was an old-fashioned drawing of beetroot. This was from a different cooking journal, and it just talks about beans and things, and then nuts and seeds on the other side. And then here's some little recipe cards that came out of that journal, and I've backed it there with a different recipe card, which I've made a little pocket with, and tucked one of those little ones behind it, which I've backed in some of that Graphic 45 paper. This is from a cookery book from the 50s, I think it is, and it's quite thin paper, so I just did a column there of Graphic 45 paper, just to give it a bit of durability. And this is suggestions for hors d'oeuvres. Some are really funny. Look at this one. Cream cheese balls. Cream cheese formed into balls and dusted with paprika. Yippee. Celery curls. Where's the other one? There's one over here. Sardines. Pickled cabbage. It's like, wow. Oh, tomatoes cut into halves and then garnish with a teaspoon of scrambled egg. Wow, what beautiful hors d'oeuvres. And then on the back here, some just different recipes that are funny. Mock crab, which you make with vinegar and condensed. Oh, sorry, not that one. Which you make with grated cheese, dry fresh eggs, and some mayonnaise. Yippee! That is really going to taste like crab, isn't it? Just an index card here, which I've lengthened with a piece of the graphic 45 paper with the cutlery on. I think it's beautiful, that. So that goes along there. This was a picture from one of the journals I've got, and I love the lace doily, because you can stick recipes on that. And then on the back here, there's a bit of about flowers and baking techniques. Here's another one of my recipe cards, and on the back there, I've stuck a vintage advert and made it a tuck spot, so you can tuck things behind it. This is a different recipe book. Again, I think this might be from the 60s though, you know, how to do jugged hare, rabbit, venison or pigeon. Who doesn't need to know how to do that in their lives? These are from this was from a magazine about oven temperatures and roasting times, so stuck that in, and then a vintage advert here that's got a turkey in it. Some tips here about making the best roast chicken. Another one of those pages with recipe cards and hints and tips. A little article here about herbs that the person might be interested in, and then oh, there's something else there, and then one about baking, and another recipe card. Here I've made an envelope out of, I think they might be K&Co paper, and I've made a little pocket that says vital ingredient, a vintage advert there, a little card, and here's another one of those recipe cards that just tucks in there. And then on the other side it is the envelope, so I can open it, and I made a index card fit there the size of a large advert, which I thought looked quite nice in that envelope. This is another book now from the 60s about baking, so I've put in the recipe for black treacle bread, malt bread, different breads there. Here's a vintage game card from a card game. Gosh, I can't get my words out today, sorry. For Muffin the Mule, which is a very English puppet who was a mule, obviously, and he did things. And this was one of his games, and he says Muffin learns to cook. Lots of recipes there, recipe cards. Here's a page here to put some notes. I've put another vintage advert. Recipe here for spiced gooseberry flan and tangerine tartlets. Very nice. Of course, if the person doesn't want these recipes, they can just rip them out or stick something over the top, can't they? This is the end of that graphic 45 paper. I said it got the cherries on, didn't it? And I made a little pocket with it where you could put in those recipe cards. Sometimes you get in papers or magazines, or you can sometimes pick them up at the supermarket as well, can't you? And here's a recipe card, and I've just decorated it with some of the domestic goddess paper, just to make it fit in with the rest of the junk journal, really. You use all the scraps up, don't you? On the back of that pocket, this was a flyer through the door advertising for organic vegetables, and so I've used that because it was such a nice good quality clear picture. One of the Robert Carrier cookery cards here for baked avocado with crab. This was a piece of paper I had with was a scrap left over from a scrapbooking project I'd done, and teacups and teapots, so I used that to back this old ledger paper, not to back it, sorry, to give it some strength at the side where the holes were punched, and that's just a little tab with a teapot on. This was from an old dictionary actually, and it got some different vegetables and fruits and things, so I did vegetable ones for this cookery book, and I've just backed it with some of that backing paper from the front cover. Another recipe card there. I think I've just left that one blank on the back. This is some of that Domestic Goddess paper from Graphic 45, and I've made it into a fold over page there, so you can tuck recipes again inside there, and I've just used bits from the paper to decorate an index card that goes there. This was another one of those old recipe books with cakes, pointers to remember. Some of the things are so daft, so funny to read actually, and the same on this side here. Another envelope made out of Graphic 45 paper, and I've decorated an index card in there as well, which I think is rather nice. This is an advert for McDougall's self-raising flour, so I've put that on. Another piece of the Graphic 45 paper, which again I've turned into a place to tuck recipes in. This is an index card on the back of an old advert. More old-fashioned recipes. This was some beautiful paper, and so I cut some out of a different sheet of paper from the same set. I cut out some little cupcakes and put them in there because I thought that looked quite cute together, and that's quite pretty. This was just a piece of 8x8 scrapbook paper I'd got, and I've left it so that you can write recipes or stick recipes in there from, you know, like from magazines or articles or whatever. Another recipe card, another piece of, I don't know if it might be die cuts with a view actually, paper, and I've made, put a recipe in here for cupcakes, actually for fairy cakes this time, and made a couple of recipe cards to tuck behind there, so you know, you've got extra space there. Another one of those beautiful pieces of paper, and so I put some recipe cards in there too. And I've made, that's just a recipe card, and I cut out one of the forks and spoons. Just a page here with a little pocket, picture of pineapple, and then there's a space to write on the back, and then there's just an old-fashioned recipe there. Used an old advert, and then here I've made a big pocket, tucked in a couple of recipe cards, a pocket here, and a little article about fish, and at the back I've just put a little advert for housewife type things. Please leave any comments if I've missed anything or want to know what make anything is, but I think that's quite nice, and I hope the lady will be pleased with it. Thank you.